All right, welcome to another video. In this in this lesson, we'll be talking about string manipulation. We'll be talking about several different methods and properties of strings. We first start off with the length property that tells us the length of the string or how many characters are in a string or in a text. We show how to insert characters into a string using the insert method. We describe how to pad a string using the pad left and pad right methods. We discuss the purpose of the contains and index of methods. Describe how to access characters in a string using the substring method. We describe a character array. We explain how to remove characters from a string using the remove method. Discuss the purpose of the trim start, and trim end methods. And we explain how to replace characters in a string using the replace method. And we describe how to use the like operator to compare strings. So the length property, this is actually not a function. You kind of use it like you would a variable, but it returns the length of the string that you're referencing. So down here in the example, figure -1, we have string, whatever the string is, dot length with an uppercase L. So if our string country is equal to Mexico, we can find out what the length of the string is by saying string county dot length, and that's going to give us the number of characters in that string. Another example is if we have some kind of a text field, we can remove all of the beginning and ending white space, like just normal space that you might actually have, and then we'll get the length. So let's look at an example. Here we're writing some code to check to see if a string ID is 5 in length. If it is, we add it to our list, else we output an error message stating that the ID must be 5 characters. Moving on to the insert method. The insert method allows us to be able to insert some characters anywhere in the string. We do that by specifying the location, the start index of where we want to insert our new set of characters, and then value contains the characters we want to insert. So for example, down here for string phone, if we want to insert an area code before the phone number, we specify 0 to say that we want to start at the very beginning of the string, and then we have our string that we insert. So that would assign the string this long telephone number with the area code. Another example would be that we want to insert a middle name or middle initial in between Jess Gomez. And so we could do that by at the 5th location, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Actually, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Insert M dot and then a space. Pad left and pad right. This allows us to be able to add extra characters at the beginning or ending or end of a string. Quite often this is useful if we want to add like white space, spaces in front or spaces at the end, or any other special character, maybe like a star or a $sign, something like that. So pad left, that would tell us that we want to pad something at the beginning of the string. Pad right is at the end of the string, and you specify what the the total number of characters that you want in the string. And then if you want to, you can specify a pad character. If you don't specify a pad character, it defaults to a space. If you specify a pad character, it will use that character that you specify. So for example, here, we want our string to be a length of 9. And so since our string is already a length of 6, it'll add 3 space characters at the beginning of 300.99. In example 2, we want to pad, we want to have 15 characters total. And so pad right will add characters at the end if it needs to make it 15 long. And so since Charles is 7 characters long, it adds 8 spaces. And in example 3, we were wanting to pad the star symbol. We first convert it to the number, we convert it to a string, and we want 2 decimal places and a $sign, and then we want it to be a length of 10 with padded with stars. And so that is the 3 stars and then a $sign. 633.75 is displayed. So here's an application that uses some of the padding. Here we're going to format with 2 decimal places. We're taking the dec number or dec net, which is a decimal, and we're converting it to a string. And we want 2 decimal places. We then pad to the left at the beginning with stars until it's 10 characters long. And then we add a $sign at the beginning using the insert statement. You can see down here, we give our net pay and then it's formatted this way whenever you click on format. There's also contain and index of methods. Contains, you give it a substring or a smaller string, and if the larger string or your main string contains that substring, it returns true. And the index of will give you the index in the string that the substring starts at, and it returns a -1 if the substring is not part of the string. So in example 1 here, we've got Louisville, Kentucky, and we check to see if our city state contains KY, and it will return true because KY is in this string. Example 2, we have Louisville, Kentucky as well, but instead we're checking to see if it contains KY with a lowercase y, and this returns false because it is case sensitive, which means that the case has to match perfectly. Example 3, with the contains method, what we're going to do so that way we don't have to worry about case is we're going to first do a to upper to the street address, and then we're going to check to see if it contains uppercase MAIN for Maine, and this will return true since our street address does contain the word Maine. Now moving on to the index of, if we want to see where Texas TX starts, we can take the index of our string location, and that will tell us that our Texas starts at, or TX, abbreviation for Texas, starts at index 8. If we want to, the index of is also case sensitive, so if we've got an uppercase TX, but we're looking for the index of uppercase T little x, it's going to return -1. Because in -1 then means that it's not in that variable. It's not in our string. And then our last example what we're going to do is you could do uppercase or lowercase. In this example, they do two lower, and whenever they do the index of, they just make sure that main is all lowercase. And then if this string contains, or if our street address contains the word main, it will return a number greater than -1. City and state application. What we could do here, and what we're going to do here, is actually take the city and the state, and we're going to look for the location of the comma. And so our application down here looks at our city-state string or our text field, and it checks to see where the index of is, and then it puts in this label index, whatever that is, whatever that index is. If it doesn't have a comma in there, it's going to return -1, and if the comma's in this is entered, it will enter in the index of where that comma is located. We also have a substring method, which allows us to be able to give us a substring or part of a string of a larger string. So for example, if we look here in example 1, we can break up the first name LaQuisha Jones into two variables, first and last, by taking the string full in substring 0 to 8, which will give us the first set of characters, and then at index 9 starts the last name Jones, and we don't have to specify an ending character for that, and it knows just to take everything that's left. Or we could actually specify it, say, in 9-5. We could also check here. We have an employee number of 38F45. You can take a substring starting at index 2 and just get one character, which would be the letter F. And I guess for the employee number here, the way that this is formatted is that character in the middle specifies the department that the person works at. And so that would be an F there. I know this is just an example, but to be honest with you, you would not want to define what department somebody's in this way. You would want to have a whole nother variable that that looks for that or does something different. You wouldn't want to do it this way and have it as part of the employee number. The employee number should be completely separated from the department. That's more of a database thing, but this is not a good practice, putting other data in here in the employee number. Just doesn't make sense. The reason why I say that is, what if the employee changes department? Are you going to give the employee a new employee number each time they move from one department to another? That's not a good way of doing things, especially if you're wanting to look at data over time. You would have an employee, they would have a new employee number for each department that they work in, and that just doesn't make a lot of sense. A good example would be, hey, look at your student number. It has nothing to do with what your major is. If you change majors, you don't have to get a new student number. So you wouldn't want to do what they've done here. So rearranging the name, what the code does here is that it will take your name and your first name and your last name, find the break between the two, search for the space in the name. It then rearranges it so that it's last comma first, and that's done here on line 32. So we find out where the space is. We then will create a variable called first name that contains everything before the space, create a variable called last name that contains everything after the space, and then combine them together, last name, comma, first name. And so you can see that down here. And so if you're wanting to sort a list of people by last name, this is the way you'd want to do it. It's something similar to this. Now, really what a string is, it's really just a list of characters, like, or an array of characters. It's just several characters put together. So we can look at this, we can actually specify individual characters in a string. So for example, down here, we've got this name Julia. And so to reference the first variable J, we could just say string of 0, and that would return J. String of 1 returns U. String name of U returns L, and so on. And so we could specify getting certain characters by indexing it this way. So this is a function that will actually go through each of the letters in a person's name that's in the text field, and we'll add them to a list. As we can see here, so we have Amanda, and then on each line is another character in Amanda's name. The strings also have another method called remove, and it will remove a specified number of characters located anywhere in the string. So how you do that is you specify the beginning of the index and then the number of characters to remove. So for example, if we've got a city state of Atlanta, Georgia, and we're only interested in the state, we could do a remove of the first 9 characters, and it will just return GA. If we're interested in just the city and not the state, we could do a remove 7, and we don't have to specify the number of characters to remove, and it knows to remove everything after 7. If you want to only remove like one character, in the third example here, if you want to remove the H, you could specify that that is the second character. We started an index of 0, then 1, 2, and then we remove one character, which is just the H. We also have trim start, and trim end methods. In chapter 4, we talked about the trim method, which removes spaces from both the beginning and the end. But if you only want to remove space from the beginning, you can use trim start. And if you want to remove them only from the end, you can use trim end. And so here's the syntax for that. For trim, you specify what the trim characters are, and it will remove those from the front and the back. So if you have price with a bunch of $signs in front and back, and you specify the $sign, it will just return 34. If you're only interested in let's see here, we want to remove the $sign or a space character, we would specify this, and it would then return 456.25, so it remove both of those characters from the front or the end. If you're only interested in removing data from or characters from the beginning of the string, you'd use trim start, and here we're specifying the $sign and the star sign, and so that would remove everything before the 3. And in example 4, we want to remove the % sign, and so we can say trim in, and it will remove 1 or more % signs at the end, and since we only got 1, it returns the value of 10. So here we have a tax calculator program, and what we're doing here is somebody may enter in a % sign at the end, or in this example here for the rates, we've got the % on the end here. And what it will do is once we click on one of these and click on calculate, It'll grab what that that rate is, and it will remove the percent sign, so that way we then can take that percent, convert it in from a string to a double, and then we can do our calculations based on what value is in the sales field here. The replace method, sometimes we've got characters that we want to replace in our string. So an example, so down here with the syntax, we have the old value and then the new value. And so down here, we've got a quote to be or not to be. And what we want to do is to take the word TO and replace that with the number 2. And so it would go through the quote or through the string quote here, and everywhere where it sees 2 and then a space, it replace that with the number 2. And we end up with the string we have here, the end example 1. And then example 2, we have something that looks a little bit like a social security number, but it's not, it's some other code. And what we want to do is remove the dashes and replace it with nothing. And so what that does then is remove the dash and just puts all the characters together. So we have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. The last operator that the last thing we will talk about is the like operator. This is actually a regular expression. So anybody that's interested in this further, they could do some kind of a Google search on regular expressions. But what this allows us to be able to do is to have more flexibility with pattern matching. And so we've got some patterns down here. If we see a percent of a question mark, it means that that matches a single character. If we've got a star, that represents 0 or more characters, and a pound sign that we see here, or the hash, whatever you want to call it, it's any single digit, so from 0 to 9. We also have the square bracket, open square bracket, a character list, and an empty square bracket. It means that any single character in that character list. So AST would match A, S, or T, whereas lowercase a through Z matches any lowercase character. So it'd be lowercase a through Z. And then there is an open square bracket exclamation mark, and then a character list, and then a closing exclamation mark, which means to match any character that's not in this list. So let's look at a few examples. If we have a variable called string, we're going to uppercase that and check to see if the name starts with B and then any character, then an L and an L, then that will evaluate to true. So something like Bill or Bell or Bull would evaluate to true. Anything that would evaluate to false would be anything that doesn't contain at least 4 characters, or like a lowercase Billy, because it ends with a Y instead of since there's no Y up here in the like string. In example 2, we're checking to see if the state starts with a K, and if that's true, it begins with letter K followed by 0 or more characters. Remember that the star means 0 or more characters. In the third example down here, we're checking for 3 numbers and then a star. So it needs to check to see if the string ID begins with 3 digits followed by 0 or more characters. So it evaluates to true for 178 and 983AB. It just has to start with 3 numbers. Examples where it's false would be X34. X is not a number, so that's going to be a problem. And 34Z5 isn't right because Z isn't a number. The first 3 has to be a number, and that's specified by these 3 hash marks here. In example 4, we've got T, and then we're looking at O, I, and M. So we're looking for the second character could be an O or an I. So what is this going to match? It's going to match Tom, or it's going to match Tim. Anything else, it's not going to match. because the string has to start with a T, it ends with an M, and then the middle character has to be an O or an I. Example 5 is we're checking to see if letter is a lowercase letter A through Z. And example, otherwise it'll be false. And in example 6, we're checking to see if a character is not an uppercase character. If it's not, then we would then say it's a non-letter plus equals 1. And since we're saying non-letter, the reason for that is because here we're uppercasing the input, and then we're checking to see if the character string is not in A through Z. In example 7, we're checking to see if there's a period. If a period appears anywhere in this input, because we have 0 more characters, a period, and then 0 or more characters. So it could start with some characters, have a period in the middle. It could start with some characters, have a period at the end. It could have no characters at the beginning, so it starts with a period and ends with some characters, or it's just a period. So all of those work. And then in the last example here, we're checking to see if we have input starts with 2 characters and then 2 numbers. So this is an advanced topic here. Regular expressions, we might be messing with it a little bit, but we won't get real advanced in it. You just need to be exposed to it and know that it exists, just in case if you need that sometime in the future. So here's an example that uses that. And what we're doing here is we're checking to see that the number that's being inserted starts with 3 letters and then has 2 numbers. If it does, then it meets our format of what an inventory number should be, and then we're adding it to our list. If not, we output an error message saying that the inventory number is not valid. So that's it. Thank you for watching this video, and I will see you next time.